Vikings fans, we're about to discuss some potential trade targets for Minnesota with the NFL trade deadline just around the corner. But I am once again asking you to subscribe. If you want more free Vikings videos, all you have to do right now is hit that big red button and join us as we ramp up our coverage here with the NFL trade deadline just around the corner. The NFL trade deadline, I believe, is always too early in the season, which means it is rapidly approaching. So what I've done today is grabbed 5 different players I think could be good trade targets for the Minnesota Vikings. There's a heavy focus on defense, which, shouldn't be a huge surprise. Let's begin with Desmond King. The Texans, in the news that will surprise nobody, are probably going to be sellers this year at the trade deadline because, they're a bad football team. Now, Desmond King is a nickel corner who usually plays pretty well. He's got 30 tackles this year, by the way, which in general, not a good thing for a corner, but if you are a nickel corner, then you tend to feel a little bit better about that. I think he could represent an upgrade over Mackenzie Alexander, who is what he is at this point. King also offers some return value if you need him in that area. Now, his coverage numbers this year don't look great. The yards are a little bit high, but in general, nickel corners, slot corners, they tend to allow a higher completion percentage because it's a lot shorter area of the field. We know what Desmond King is. Is he an elite nickel corner? No, I think he's a bit more well-regarded by media and fans than he is by the NFL. His contracts have reflected that. But I look at this Minnesota Vikings team, and this is the only corner I put on here, mostly because just play Cam Dantzler over Bashaud Breeland. It's not that hard. If Minnesota does that, their number 2 cornerback spot is immediately, I would argue, kind of settled. Dantzler's played well this year when given the chance. You're not going to move Patrick Peterson, so look at the nickel corner side of things in the end. I want you guys now to name a player you want to trade for. I hope that you keep it somewhat realistic, but it's okay, I guess, if you don't. But get your votes in for me in the comments section. Now time for a high-risk, high-reward option. That's K'Lavon Chaisson, who I liked a lot coming out of LSU, but I wonder if he's not really in a great spot in Jacksonville. They are a terrible team, and they've already shown the willingness to move on from former high draft picks. I'm looking at you, C.J. Henderson. Chaisson is not developed yet, but that's okay. He was always going to be a more long-term project for a first-round pick. With the regime change in Jacksonville, his usage has dipped, which is weird because you have a young former first-round pick. You should play that guy, not DeJuan Smoot. That's a weird move by Jacksonville. It makes me wonder how much longer he's going to be with the Jags. So this could be a good buy low option. In what amounts to a bit less than a full season in the NFL, 34 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 13 quarterback hits. He's been able to get some pressure. It's just that it hasn't resulted yet in sacks. And I look at this Minnesota team, and I know they've invested a lot with recent draft picks. I acknowledge that. I see that with DJ Wan, who's not been that good. Janarius Robinson, Patrick Jones. I know there's been investment in the position. Jalen Holmes, too. I get that. But Chaisson might bring you a little bit more talent. And with Danielle Hunter being a maybe to return after this year with the way his contract is set up and Everson Griffin being good but being old, maybe this is the type of short-term and long-term guy a team like Minnesota should be looking at. So what do you guys think? Just overall, will the Vikings make any trade before this year's NFL trade deadline? I wonder if Minnesota should be aggressive since I worry about the future of the GM and head coach if they miss the playoffs this year. But get your votes in. 1 for yes, they will. 0 for no, they will not. We'll focus now on defensive tackle, and I know they've invested in this spot too. It hasn't really paid off the way I think most Vikings fans were hoping for at this stage. The Falcons, meanwhile, are not a good team. Ooh, you beat the Jets in London. Cool story, bro. Jarrett would present a big and proven boost to the defensive line, and the Falcons can take Sheldon Richardson while they're at it. Contract is an issue here. $13.5 million base salary this year, owed $16.5 million next year. But the Vikings or the Falcons could find a way to finesse that number. Quick reminder, by the way, wouldn't be the entire $13.5 Minnesota would owe. It's really that base salary divided by 17, multiplied by however many games he's going to play for Minnesota. So we'll round $7 million. A little bit more affordable. They could play around with it and then make it into maybe a signing bonus and then cut him next year if you had to. Jarrett, I do think, is nearing the end of his prime, but he's still impactful in a situation that does not really provide for a lot of great opportunities in terms of making a big-time impact. Now, Minnesota has paid a lot for this defensive line. Dalvin Tomlinson, Michael Pierce, who's a bit banged up right now. They rotate defensive tackles anyway. Lynch, Watts, it's whatever. Maybe the best bet is you say, okay, whatever, Sheldon Richardson, you could ship him off to Atlanta as part of this deal and get an upgraded defensive tackle and hope that results in better defensive play overall. Because this run defense has not been what it was supposed to be given all the investment at this position. Now, I kind of teased this earlier. I wonder if Minnesota, with Mike Zimmer maybe on the hot seat and Rick Spielman potentially tied to him, I wonder if they're a bit worried about their jobs status, their job security long term. If that's the case, those types of organizations should be buyers at the deadline. And Minnesota's not that far removed from having 3 or 4 wins, a couple bad luck, bad breaks across the season. So what do you think? Will the Vikings, what will the Vikings be at the deadline? B for buyers, S for sellers. I almost put a kicker in here, but no one ever should trade kickers because that just doesn't make sense in the middle of a season. Let's go to linebacker then. Anthony Barr is, I think, coming and staying back. We'll see. He's always a bit banged up right now. There is a report, though, from ESPN that the Browns are open to moving linebacker Mack Wilson. Now, Wilson was a starter at one point for Cleveland. Now, that was due to the lack of good talent at the position. That has changed in recent years, and now Mack Wilson, in a rather short time, has gone from starter to backup and on the roster bubble with all the depth they're getting back from a health perspective. Wilson is not a great football player. He's not great in coverage. 13 tackles this year. Not bad for more of a part-time player role. His snap counts have gone the wrong way pretty much every single game he's been a part of the Browns this season. But I look at what the Vikings have at linebacker, and assuming we trust Anthony Brown, which I hope we do, I've been very underwhelmed by Nick Vigil. I don't think he's played that great. I like Chaisson, Troy Dye long-term. They're not there now, but Conley and Lynch, whatever. Maybe Wilson, for a mid to late, probably more of a late day 3 pick, would give you some good depth at the position and help you feel better in the event that, Anthony Barr doesn't actually end up staying healthy this year. So not a big name, but a cheaper, buy low, late day 3 pick, which the Vikings always seem to have plenty of. And what do you guys think is the biggest need for the Vikings? I didn't include quarterback on here because, let's be honest, they're stuck with Kirk Cousins for now, but you can put in QB if you want. I want to see what you guys are saying. Get your votes in for me in the comments section. I did want to go with one offensive name. I went with Eric Ebron here, and I thought about offensive line, but once you play Christian Darrisaw at left tackle, you've got a lot of investment there, so I crossed that off the list. You don't need a new back. You're not going to get a quarterback. Receiver's fine. So I was left with tight end. The Chris Herndon trade has not worked out. Now, it's still early. Hope that he breaks out, fares better. The Vikings have liked to use multiple tight end sets in the past, and Ebron has not been used by Pittsburgh. He has not been a factor, but we are a year removed from Ebron still being a contributing member of an NFL franchise, and a pretty decent one at that. 56 grabs, 558 yards, 5 touchdowns for a quarterback whose arm is busted. I think it's at least worth exploring. And it's a short-term solution, right? Like Ben Elfson, Chris Herndon, I'm whelmed by those guys. You can still make Tyler Conklin your tight end 1. I'm not saying that you don't want to do that. But if Ebron can come in, you can make the money work out however you need to. You did it with Chris Herndon after all. Maybe you make Ebron your tight end 2. And you feel better about that position, especially if, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen, if Conklin ends up going down. So not the sexiest list of names, but I think some potential upgrades there for Minnesota.